1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. I hope you're having just the best day. I know I am. Great morning, great start to the day, great night of sports last night. Tennessee winning the College World Series, which is just, the worst. It's fine, whatever. Panthers hold on. They do not blow a 3-1 lead. Instead, they hold on and they win the Stanley Cup. So congrats to the Florida Panthers. But in local news and things that are going on around Indianapolis, I have to raise the question. How many people have to say that someone or something is being slept on until it's established that that thing is actually not being slept on? Because yesterday, Dan Orlovsky joined a couple other media members in tweeting out something about Anthony Richardson being slept on or flying under the radar. Here was the tweet from former Lions quarterback Dan Orlovsky. Quote, under the radar player who could throw the whole league off if he takes the leap. Once again, the question we always ask, what is the leap? Anthony Richardson. He is the third on-air personality from, ESPN or whatever to suggest that Anthony Richardson is being slept on, right? Kay Adams of FanDuel TV said it. Mina Kimes of ESPN also said it. And I don't know. I just kind of feel like we're at a point where people aren't actually sleeping on Anthony Richardson. No one's, everyone, people are talking about him more than they're talking about Jalen Hurts. They are. And I get it. I understand why Anthony Richardson is the pick when it comes to guessing which year 2 quarterback is going to take a leap. Okay? It makes sense. Anthony Richardson is the obvious choice because when we look at the other 3 quarterbacks that were drafted relatively high and played a lot of games, he just makes the most sense. CJ Stroud. He had an incredible year 1. Okay, his rookie season was great. He played like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL last year. He won the AFC South. Okay, he won a playoff game. Okay, he was good last year. So in order for CJ Stroud to make a leap in year 2, being a fringe top 10 quarterback in the NFL last year, because once again, that is what he looked like. In order for CJ Stroud to make that leap, he would have to play as well as or better than players like Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford. That's a lot to ask of a year 2 quarterback. It is. And so when it comes to CJ Stroud, people aren't going to pick him to make the leap just because of how great he was his rookie season. Okay, when it comes to Bryce Young, the former number 1 overall pick going back to last year, he was bad last year. So it's like, Jonathan, if people didn't want to pick CJ Stroud because he was so good, why wouldn't they pick Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick, and he was bad last year? Well, when we look at why Bryce Young was so terrible last year, it's because the players around him were awful. Okay? This is, once again, going to be the case this year. Bryce Young isn't in a position to take a year 2 leap because the Panthers roster is probably the worst in the NFL. People are going to write Bryce Young off this year because he's going to have another bad year. But it's hard for quarterbacks to play well when the offensive line in front of you isn't very good and your best wide receiver is 34-year-old Adam Thielen. It just is. Okay, Bryce Young doesn't have the proper supports to make a year 2 leap. Okay, he is surrounded by bad players and a rookie head coach. That is not the player that you want to bet on to take a year 2 leap. It's just not. That's not a great situation to be in. Will Levis, right? That he would be the third option when it comes to projecting which quarterbacks will take a year 2 leap. Will Levis played a decent amount of games last year. Okay, he played 9 games. The Titans went 3-6 in those games, and he just didn't look good. He didn't. He has a good roster around him, right? The Titans have done a good job of going out and addressing some needs. They bring in Calvin Ridley, him, DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks. Those are 3 good wide receivers. They get rid of the head coach. They bring in a new, young, offensive-minded kind of guy. But the issue, once again, with Will Levis is that he didn't exactly light it up last year. The tape isn't great. He only completed 58% of his passes. He only threw 8 touchdowns in 9 games. He threw 4 interceptions. Like a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio isn't exactly what you want, especially when your quarterback's only throwing 8 touchdowns. So I don't think that that's a guy that the media wants to bet on, because the tape and the production that we saw from him last year just wasn't very good. And that leaves us with Anthony Richardson, where you can see a lot of the things that you like. Like, just look at the dude. Like, he looks like an NFL player. When you look at all the quarterbacks in this class, he looks like the guy that should be awesome, because he's big and he's strong and he's fast and he has a big arm. Okay, like, you can see all of these things immediately. He also didn't play much last year. Okay, if Anthony Richardson plays 12 games this year, then whoever discusses the idea or throws out the idea that Anthony Richardson will make a leap or that people are sleeping on him, they will be correct just if he plays this year. His number's going to go up in a big way if he's just available. And you would think that he would be. You would think that Shane Steichen and these dudes are going to grab him and be like, hey, man, let's not run as much. Let's stay on the field. Okay? And when you look at the other 3 guys, they just don't appear to be in positions to make year 2 leaps. And that leaves us with Anthony Richardson, who has a good head coach that seems to be more than capable of calling plays and putting players in positions to be successful. He did it in Philadelphia. He did it last year with the Colts, despite playing the majority of the season with a backup quarterback and no Jonathan Taylor. Okay? When we look at the offensive line, it's not terrible. When we look at the weapons, he's got some weapons. He does. Jonathan Taylor is a good running back that should be reliable this year. Michael Pittman Jr. is a good receiver. He's not a great one, but he's a good one. Okay, people seem to love Edey Mitchell. And, the Colts have a whole stable's worth of tight ends. So, like, there's options for Anthony Richardson when it comes to weapons. And as I said, the offensive line, isn't terrible. And the head coach seems like he's pretty good. And so when you look around and compare it to the other 3 quarterbacks that were drafted last year, like, Anthony Richardson is in a much better situation than Bryce Young. Okay, and he doesn't have to be amazing like C.J. Stroud to be considered to have made a leap. All right, and when it comes to Will Levis just didn't look very good. And the small amount that we saw from Anthony Richardson, I thought he looked better than Will Levis, which isn't saying much. Like, Anthony Richardson is the clear choice when choosing second-year quarterbacks who could possibly take a leap. The question is obviously, will he? Will he take the leap that people are expecting of him this year? Let me translate that to, can he stay healthy this year? Because that's really what this is all dependent upon. If Anthony Richardson is available, he'll be fine, because Shane Steichen is a good head coach who's going to put him in spots where he can succeed. Okay? And I think the other thing that plays a role in this is the one full game that we watched from Anthony Richardson last year. He threw for 2 touchdowns and he ran for another. Okay? Let's ignore the fact that he was 11 of 25 throwing the ball against the Rams. But look, in the red zone, he was good. And I think that's a large part of what people look for. I think it is much easier for a coach to help a player improve at the quarterback position between the 20s, right? Because there's more field to play with. You have more options in terms of running the ball and doing those things. In the red zone, though, field's smaller, and obviously that makes it harder to throw the ball and to be productive. For Richardson, though, he was good in the red zone last year, which is a good sign for the future. And I think that's why people are picking him to make this year 2 leap. It is completely feasible for Anthony Richardson to have a season where he throws for 23 touchdowns and rushes for another 12. Okay, that's a 35 touchdown season. And if he does that, then he'll be a legit threat, and the Colts will be a legit playoff team if he does that. And I don't think that that's out of the question. So he just has to stay on the field, and he has to stay healthy, which he should be more than capable of doing. Now, I want to continue talking about the Colts and just something that I really want them to do, even though I know that they won't. I want the Colts to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. I think it'd be awesome. I think it would truly help this Colts team. Like what if the Colts traded for Brandon Aiyuk? This would never happen because, as we all know, Chris Ballard refuses to take any risk whatsoever. As we all know, Chris Ballard refuses to be aggressive, which I still think is the biggest issue with him. The Colts would probably have to give up a first-round pick for him, but that's fine. Okay, I watched the Rams win a Super Bowl a couple years ago, and you know what they did to make it happen? They gave up a lot of first-round picks, and I don't think that they regretted it one bit. And then when you look at the receiving core, if you bring in Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, come on now. Brandon Aiyuk, your clear number one wide receiver. Michael Pittman, your clear number two wide receiver. Then it's Edey Mitchell and Josh Downs. That sounds like a great receiving core to me. That sounds like a receiving core that could elevate a young quarterback like Anthony Richardson, right? That's kind of the whole point of this. And we've seen teams do this before where they bring in these, slightly older, more experienced wide receivers that everyone knows can play and create separation and do all those things. And that helps quarterbacks early on in their careers. In addition to that, I think it'd be great for Edey Mitchell if the Colts brought in Brandon Aiyuk. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. But it makes sense to me because it would take the pressure off of Edey Mitchell to contribute immediately. Okay, I know I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but rookie seasons from Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, like those guys were outstanding. Puka Nacua last year, those aren't normal. It usually takes rookie wide receivers a bit of time to develop and figure out how the NFL works because it's very different from playing in college. Because in college, the route trees are pretty simple. Can you run a slant? Can you run a dig? Can you run it out? Can you run a go? And every receiver in college football can do those things. And the NFL is obviously it's more complicated. And so I think bringing in a guy like Brandon Aiyuk would not only elevate the offense, it takes some pressure off of Edey Mitchell, and it gives Shane Steichen another truly elite weapon. But it would also be a wise use of cap space. Allowing cap space to go unused is pointless. I know that that's something that people like to talk about around here. But when you don't use all of the resources and all of the money available to you, you are handicapping yourself. Okay? Imagine if somebody gave you, 1,000 pieces of wood, okay, to build a house, and you only used 800 pieces of wood. Your house probably wouldn't be as nice or as good as the guy who used all 1,000 pieces, right? Like you're handicapping yourself. And in the NFL, the salary cap is around $255 million. If you're only using 220 of that, which that's about what the Colts are using, it may be closer to 230, but they're leaving like $25 million on the table. If you're not using all the money you've made available to you, then you're not trying to win. Okay, that is $25 million worth that could be put towards a winning player, whether that's one winning player or that's multiple. But instead, it's going to sit there idly and not do anything. Okay? And that's pointless. The Colts have a small window to win a Super Bowl with Anthony Richardson on his rookie contract. Okay? And that timer has already started. This is year 2 out of 5. Okay? And look, the course of NFL history tells us that the best and easiest time to win a Super Bowl is when your quarterback is on a rookie contract. It just is, because if you're, the Chiefs and you have Patrick Mahomes, it means that you can not only afford Travis Kelce, but you can also afford Eric Fisher, who is one of the best left tackles in football. And you can also afford Tyreek Hill, right? Like it's easier to win when your quarterback is on that rookie deal. And the Colts they aren't taking advantage of it right now, right? And as we continue to look at the history of the NFL, the only quarterbacks who win Super Bowls after their rookie contract are all-time greats. Patrick Mahomes has done it. Peyton Manning has done it. Tom Brady has done it. Drew Brees has done it. Aaron Rodgers has done it, right? Those are the first, few players that come to mind that all won Super Bowls after their rookie contract was up. And those guys are all-time greats. Other quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, right, who comes in the league, kind of takes the league by somewhat of a storm. When he won his first Super Bowl, guess what? He was on a rookie contract. As soon as he started being paid major money, guess what? The Seahawks weren't good. We saw the Broncos last year, not very good. I think everybody kind of knows that the Steelers this year, Probably not going to be great on offense. Okay, the Eagles in 2018, when they won it, Carson Wentz wasn't the starter in the Super Bowl, but he was the starter for most of the season. Guess what? He was still on his rookie contract. It is easier to win when you are not paying your quarterback a truckload of money. It just is. So this is the time for the Colts to be aggressive because Anthony Richardson isn't making a boatload of money yet. Okay, he's not. This is the time to go out and get great support players. The Colts are in that window with Richardson. And if he's the player that everyone thinks that he is, then Chris Ballard should have his foot down, gas to the floor. Okay, doing everything he can to add players that can help the Colts win a Super Bowl. Look, he's clearly not doing that. Okay, because if he was, then he'd have called the Chargers yesterday and be like, hey, we got a first round pick for Brandon Aiyuk if you want it. And then the 49ers would be like, yeah, we don't know. Let us call you back. And then they would have realized, okay, Brandon Aiyuk really doesn't want to be here. Let's dump him while we can to the Colts, and we'll see what happens from there. Chris Ballard, get on the phone. Call the 49ers, and let's go get Brandon Aiyuk and elevate this offense and give it a real legitimate punch when you're going out and you're playing the Texans and these other teams, not only in the division, but just across the league in general. Got a load of show for you today. The NBA draft is tomorrow, so I'm going to touch on that a little bit. Decent chances that we hear both Zach Edey and Kel'el Ware's names called at the draft tomorrow and during the first round. Pacers have multiple second-round picks. Who are they going to look at? OG Anunoby's going to hit the open market, so we got some hoops. I've got, some thoughts on the hockey game last night. I don't know enough about hockey, and it's not exactly a local story, so I'm going to slightly mention that, but not super in-depthly. And then I've got, of course, I've got a Top 10 Tuesday, which is coming your way at some point. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, though, I'm going to talk NBA free agency, what the Pacers could do, and the NBA draft that's coming up here in 4 minutes.
Save big money at Menards and tame your landscape with 80-volt outdoor power equipment from Masterforce. Designed with power and performance in mind, you can now maximize your productivity with a new Flex Connect system. Quickly switch from different Flex Connect attachments like the hedge trimmer, pole saw, string trimmer, edger, and more to turn the power of one tool into multiple. Kickstart your project today with Masterforce at Menards and see the rest of our deals on Menards.com.
Save big money at Menards.
On a mission to protect free speech, Rumble is one of the only video sharing platforms where you can watch genuine
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, maybe that's, in the car, or 1430 AM. Maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Maybe you're watching on Twitter. Follow us there at Ticket1430. And, if you can also watch on YouTube. That's the one I was trying to get to. You can also watch on YouTube. Follow us there. Subscribe at Indy's Sports Tickets. And we can have an absolute blast. Otter Creek coming out firing today. He just wants the Pacers to trade everybody. And everybody who's a Pacers fan wants for the Pacers to go out and sign OG Anunoby, who declined his player option and will officially be on the market this off season. Let me debunk this right now. The Pacers are not going to sign OG Anunoby. Okay? It's not going to happen. Just like the Pacers are not going to sign Paul George. It's not going to happen. The Pacers don't have the salary cap space to make it happen. Okay? When we look at OG Anunoby, he is going to get too much money for the Pacers to be able to afford him. He declined a $20 million player option. Okay? That means he thinks that he is worth more than $20 million a year. Okay? That is what he is communicating by declining that option. I don't know if he is. He gets hurt a lot, but it's not about what I think. It's about what he thinks, and it's about what these teams think as well. OG Anunoby is going to want somewhere between $30 to $40 million a year. I got to be honest. I don't think he's worth that much. He's a great player. Do not get me wrong. He's one of the best two-way players in the NBA. But no one in their right mind should be paying their third best player that much money, especially with these new salary cap rules that go into effect not this upcoming year, but the year after. Okay? It's not worth it. The Knicks are in the best position to pay OG Anunoby because they aren't paying Jalen Brunson that much. Jalen Brunson is not a max contract player. Okay, he's only making $25 million a year. Okay? It is similar to the rookie quarterback contract thing that I talked about, 10 minutes ago. Okay, when you aren't paying your best / most important player a truckload of cash every single year, it makes it so much easier to surround them with top-tier talent. I'm telling you right now, the New York Knicks are going to re-sign OG Anunoby. Okay, Pacers fans, it's not happening. He's not going to be in the yellow and navy blue next year. It's not going to happen. Would it be great? Would it be awesome to see him come home after playing for IU? Yes, of course it would. The Pacers simply do not have the funds to afford him. Okay, without getting overly into how this new contract stuff without getting overly into how this new salary cap in the NBA works, it is now structured to where teams can basically afford 2 stars. And if you want to pay for a third, you are going to go above the first apron, which makes things incredibly difficult to do anything. Okay, that's why the Knicks have such an advantage because they aren't paying Jalen Brunson a max contract. They aren't. Okay, that's why the Knicks are going to keep OG Anunoby. The only other team that might be able to pry him away from New York are the 76ers. And that's because currently they only have 3 players under contract going forward. Ricky Council IV, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey. 2 extremely important players, right? Like that's obviously the appeal in going to play there. So because they only have 3 players under contract, they have plenty of money to offer him. And Tyrese Maxey, I don't think he's signed his monster extension quite yet, but it's coming. It is. But it hasn't come into effect just yet. So that means that the 76ers also have extra money to throw around until that happens. The Indiana Pacers, however, do not have that. They gave Pascal Siakam a max extension. Okay? They're going to be paying him a lot of money over these next 4 years. And Tyrese Halliburton signed a max extension as well. The money for Tyrese Halliburton kicks in this upcoming season. Okay, the Pacers aren't going to have the money to pay OG Anunoby with the new salary cap rules. Now, they could pay him in spite of that, and they could suffer the consequences, but I just don't think that the consequences that come from it are worth having OG Anunoby. Okay, especially when the Pacers are already as deep as they are. Okay. And the consequences for it are basically, without getting too granular, you can't make trades, you can't sign free agents. It's an absolute pain in the butt. And what I'm about to say next, it may sound backwards, but the best thing for the Indiana Pacers to do going forward is for them to not sign OG Anunoby. That way they can remain flexible going forward in the future, and it won't freeze any of their draft picks. Yes, if you spend too much money now, if you go too far over the salary cap and you enter into the second apron, then the NBA freezes your first-round pick. I know, it's nuts. It's crazy, but that's just the way that it works now. And so in order for the Pacers to remain flexible with their money, they need to avoid signing OG Anunoby, unless he's willing to take a discount, which I wouldn't bet on. Moving into the NBA draft, which starts tomorrow night, first round, decent chance. We hear two names of guys. We hear the names of two players that played in the state of Indiana this year for college basketball, obviously being Zach Edey and Kel'el Ware. They are both potential, probably going to be first-round picks. And I want to start with Zach Edey, right? Because the conversation around him is so unique. And for me, when I get into these conversations, it's very easy to tell who watches both the NBA and college basketball and who only watches college basketball or who only watches the NBA. Okay, the guys who only watch the NBA will be like, oh, he's too slow. He doesn't have the foot speed. Okay, in some ways, he's too big to play in the NBA. That's what the prime NBA only watchers say. And then you move to the other side of the spectrum, and it's people who only watch college basketball. And they're like, he's 7'4". He dunks the ball a lot. He has good touch around the rim. He's a decent free throw shooter. Put him in the league. He's league bound. Right? And then you've got me in the middle who's like, both things are kind of true. Let me find kind of the middle ground of where reality is, okay? So let's start with defense, because I do think that is the biggest question for Zach Edey. So for him defensively, it's like, yes, he is a good low post defender. Okay, I will not deny that. But here's the issue. Teams don't throw the ball in the post. So that is a moot point. Okay, I don't care that Zach Edey is a great post defender because teams don't play through the post in the NBA. That being said, size is becoming a premium at the NBA level. Every single team has size at every single position. Just look at the Pacers. They're going to run Tyrese Halliburton out to play point guard. He's 6'5". They're going to run Benedict Mathurin out to play shooting guard. He's like 6'7". They're going to run Aaron Nesmith out to play small forward. He's like 6'7". Okay, they're going to run Miles Turner out there, who's 7 feet tall. And sometimes they're going to pair him with Jalen Smith or, who's 7 feet tall. But most of the time, the power forward's going to be Pascal Siakam, who's like 6'9". So size is a premium in the NBA. And Zach Edey possesses that, and that should help him be a good defender. The question is, how does he do defensively? Because I do think that offensively he'll be fine. And to the NBA guys who are like, Zach Edey can't defend on the perimeter, you're right. But now I have to ask the question, how many 7-footers in the NBA can actually defend on the perimeter? There's like one, and his name's Victor Wembanyama, and he's an absolute freak. So it's not that big of a deal that Zach Edey can't defend on the perimeter. The question is, will Zach Edey be able to continue to defend the rim? The answer to that is yes, because he's 7'4" and he's tall and he's long and he has good hand-eye coordination. You can see that in the way that he catches the ball on offense. And because of that, he should be fine protecting the rim. And the other question is, can he play good drop coverage? Because that's what every big 7-footer does in the NBA, except for guys like Victor Wembanyama. Okay, Rudy Gobert has made a lot of money playing good drop coverage in the NBA. Okay, Brook Lopez has made a lot of money playing good drop coverage in the NBA. That is what will be asked of Zach Edey. And the question is, will he be able to do it? I don't know. I'm excited for the Olympics because we're going to find out when he's playing for Team Canada and they play, Team USA or Germany or one of these other good teams, and they put him in those situations where he has to be mobile. I think he's going to be fine. I think he moves better than people realize. So defensively, I think he will be okay. Moving to the offensive side of the ball. If you hear people throw out even the idea of giving Zach Edey the ball in the post, just ignore them because that just doesn't happen in the NBA anymore. Teams do not play through the post anymore. It doesn't happen. Okay? Nikola Jokic, the best offensive player in the league, the best player in the league, period. Okay? He led the league in post touches per game on average. And the number's only 8. Okay? Nikola Jokic, the best post scorer in the NBA, only gets 8 post touches a game. That's not very many. And second is Joel Embiid, and he only gets 4 post touches a game, which is not very many. Teams are not going to pause their offense to watch Zach Edey dribble the ball 3 times on the low block. It's not going to happen. Okay? So when we look at Zach Edey in terms of what he can do offensively at the NBA level, the question is not, can he post up and score? Because those opportunities will not be afforded to him. Okay? The question is going to be, is Zach Edey capable in the pick and roll? And the answer to that is yes. He and Braden Smith running that screen and roll action at Purdue was good, solid offense because Zach Edey has good hands. And passing's not great from Zach Edey, but the passing isn't terrible either, right? He's capable. And that's the question that I have for Zach Edey. Can he catch the ball on the roll, survey the floor, and figure out where the ball is supposed to go? Am I supposed to take a dribble and take a layup? Am I supposed to kick it to the weak side corner? Am I supposed to kick it to the strong side corner? Do I need to just hold it and reset the offense? That is the thing that I'm curious about with Zach Edey. I'm also curious about the jump shot stuff because when you talk to NBA scouts and the way that they look at, can this guy potentially develop a jump shot? They look at 2 things. They look at touch, right? Like, do they make a lot of floaters? Do they make a lot of these flip shots? Like, what does that look like? And the answer for Zach Edey is yes. I think the touch that he has around the rim is obvious. And then the other thing that they're going to look at is free throw percentage. Zach Edey was like a 75% free throw shooter his junior and senior year. That is good. That is a good number. That is something that teams can undoubtedly build off of. With that being said, I'm not expecting for Zach Edey to turn into a guy that shoots 40% from 3. Okay? That's not what I'm expecting. But can he be a guy who can knock down a 15-foot jump shot? Yes. I would definitely say that Zach Edey could do that. So those are the questions that have to be answered for Zach Edey. And I think we're going to see a lot of these questions answered during the Olympic basketball games. Okay? Because it's international. They're going to put Zach Edey in a spread, pick and roll kind of stuff. And we're going to see if he can defend it. And then offensively, like he's playing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Andrew Nembhard and Jamal Murray. Okay, Team Canada's not going to pause their offense to watch Zach Edey dribble 3 times. They're not going to do it. So, how effective is he as a roller off of these screens? That question will be answered this summer as well. I can't wait to watch. It should be a lot of fun. Moving now to Kel'el Ware, who is going to get drafted below Zach Edey. That is undoubtedly how I feel. And I like Kel'el Ware. I think Kel'el Ware is going to play in the NBA for 8 to 10 years because he is a prototypical big guy in the NBA. He can set screens. He's athletic, so he can roll to the rim. He can finish. The question is going to be, can he pass the ball out of the short roll? That's kind of the question for all these 7-footers now. On defense, he's athletic. It's going to allow him to defend the rim. You know, I don't think that if he gets switched onto a guard, I don't think that he's just a chair. Like, I think he can put up some sort of a fight because he is so athletic. The questions around Kel'el Ware are about the motor. Like, because it doesn't look like he always plays hard. It doesn't. And when you look at what happened at Oregon, he didn't play because he didn't play very hard. Even at IU this last year, like, there were moments where it's like, is he even there? Is he even trying? What's going on? When he was engaged, though, I thought he was pretty good for IU last year. He was a force on both ends. In the pros, because that's what we're talking about here, like, he checks a lot of boxes. He's big. He's athletic. I think he finishes around the rim well. He shot 40% from 3, albeit he didn't take a ton of threes, but he showed the ability to knock those down. So, like, he checks boxes that NBA teams want. The question is, what kind of happens. He's also, a former 5-star prospect who is one of the best players coming out of high school. Like, there are some NBA teams out there that will draft based off of merit like that. So, going to be interesting. Here's kind of the floor, I think, for Kel'el Ware. I don't think he's a starter, okay? But he's a player who will be good enough to come off the bench, rim run, protect the rim for 20 minutes a night. If you get that out of your 18th pick, especially in this draft that is really thin, okay, I think any team would be more than happy if that was their takeaway from this draft class. The Florida Panthers beat the Edmonton Oilers last night. They staved off the 0-3 comeback. They were able to win 2-1. Great game. Watched the whole thing. And then I watched the ending, and the trophy presentation was cool, but the NHL does something that every single sport should do. I'm going to get to that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. I tuned in to watch Stanley Cup Game 7 winner-take-all game last night between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. Florida Panthers winning that one 2-1. Great game. Don't know how Edmonton didn't score in the third period. There's a moment, and I love watching hockey. It's official. I truly enjoy it because I can just be a dumb sports fan. I don't understand all the rules. I can just sit there. I can yell at the TV and be like, why didn't Edmonton score? Because there's a moment where that's really kind of what it felt like. And, like the Florida Panthers goalie is like sprawled out on the ice. There's nobody in front of the net. The goalie's, hockey stick is like 10 yards in the other direction. And so at one point he's playing goalie and he doesn't have his stick. And it's, you're sitting there and the puck is like, 5 feet away from the net. And you're like, how is Edmonton not scored? And it was exhilarating. It was great. It was fun to watch. And the Panthers wind up winning and they do the whole pass the trophy around. Everybody does a lap, hoisting it up over their heads and doing those things. And before that, though, they give out what is the Conn Smythe Award, which is an award that should be given out in every single sport, every single one. It's great. It's fun. And the Conn Smythe is awesome. So where the NBA has the NBA Finals MVP, and where the NFL has the Super Bowl MVP, and Major League Baseball has the World Series MVP, the NHL gives out the Conn Smythe Award, which goes to the most valuable player during the entire playoffs. Connor McDavid on the losing team won it last night for Edmonton, and he should have because he's the best player in hockey. I don't know anything about hockey, and I was talking to one of my coworkers on the way in. And I asked him if he watched it, and he was like, "Yeah, I watched it." He's like, "I don't know anything about hockey." I was like, "I don't either." But when Connor McDavid has the puck, it just looks different. Like I don't have to be a genius. I don't have to know a ton about hockey to know that Connor McDavid just looks very different from every other guy on the ice when he has the puck. And so I like this idea of instead of giving out a single game MVP award, instead I kind of like how they give out something that encompasses the entire playoffs. Because like just looking back, at the history of basketball and even in the history of the NFL, like it feels weird knowing that Andre Iguodala won Finals MVP in 2015 over Steph Curry. Like he shouldn't have. Let's get that on the record. But it was weird. And if it was a playoff long thing, then that wouldn't have happened. Okay, it would have gone to Steph Curry, right? And then in 2018, the reward could have gone to LeBron James, even though he lost. It's kind of like what happened last night with Connor McDavid losing and still winning the Conn Smythe Award, right? I think it makes it more interesting, and I think it better symbolizes how the playoffs went that year. Okay, like when we look at the NFL, like Julian Edelman has a Super Bowl MVP, and he was great in that Super Bowl, but Tom Brady should probably have every single Super Bowl MVP because he is the most valuable player on every Patriots team that won a Super Bowl. Okay, like he just is. And if instead of the award being Super Bowl MVP, if instead it was playoffs MVP, then Tom Brady would probably have more of them. Okay, like doing the one-off game thing is like, that's fine. It's an okay way to do it. But when I think about awards and the things that we hand out, even during the regular season, like they should be snapshots of the season. Okay, like when teams vote for All-Pro in the NFL, like, in 20 years, we should be able to look back and read it and be like, yeah, that's right. These were the best players in the NFL that season. Okay, when we look back at the All-NBA stuff, we should be like, okay, yeah, these were the best players in the NBA that season. Oh, that guy won MVP? Yeah, I remember. He was the most valuable. He was the best player that season. That is kind of what awards should do. And I think that, when we look at the NBA, that's why people get upset with Rudy Gobert winning Defensive Player of the Year awards, because it never feels like he's the best defender. And that's what that award is supposed to be. And when we look back, in 20 years, like we're going to be like, Rudy Gobert, was he really the best defender? Like that shouldn't be the response. And I think that the postseason should work the exact same way. Okay. The final award or the personal awards given out during the postseason should be a snapshot of who the best player was, like finals MVP, World Series MVP, and Super Bowl MVP. Don't always give an accurate snapshot of who the best player on whatever team wins the title was. Okay. So if sports were instead to do a playoffs MVP like the NHL does, then I think we would get a more proper snapshot of who the most impactful players were during every season. Okay. So there's that. Conn Smythe Award, great idea, should be applied to every single sport. That was probably my second favorite thing in terms of just like the meaning of who won the Stanley Cup. The other thing that I just really makes me happy is that Canada still sucks at hockey. They haven't won a Stanley Cup in forever. It's been like 13 years now. That sounds right. And I just love it that Canada absolutely loves hockey. And for whatever reason, they can't have a Stanley Cup parade because they can't beat these American teams. They can't. We're just too good for these Canadians. We're just built different down here in the South. I don't know what it is. I don't know, but maybe it's because we don't speak French. I think if you speak French, you're just immediately labeled soft. I think that's why NBA guys don't like Rudy Gobert. It's just because he speaks French. I don't know. But I think as soon as you begin to utter that, I don't want to call it gibberish, but as soon as you begin to speak in that language, you just immediately get labeled soft. So moving now into Top 10 Tuesday. I made two lists, and I didn't know which one I wanted to do. So I'm going to name both of them. If you're in the YouTube chat, I will actually let you decide which list I do today. I'll probably push the next one to next week. So for Top 10 Tuesdays, my first list that I did was the best one-time champions, like the best players that have only won one Super Bowl or World Series or whatever, because I was thinking last night about what weight would, like what does Edmonton winning mean? And it would mean that Connor McDavid finally won a Stanley Cup and he would be on this list. He's not because they lost, but that was kind of the idea. And then my other idea was the top 10 biggest meltdowns ever, because it was like, if Edmonton wins, then, Panthers blow a 3-0 lead, and that obviously belongs on the list as well. So which of those two, I guess, would you prefer? As if you're watching on YouTube, do you want the biggest meltdowns ever, or do you want the best one-time champs ever? See, it pays to listen on YouTube. All right. You can comment, do all those things, and let me know which one you want. I know that I have one that I prefer. But we'll kind of see what happens going forward. No one's going to comment anything. All right, then. So I'm going to pick. Let's do Top 10 Tuesday, the biggest meltdowns ever. Oh, no, never mind. Buzzard. Coming in at the buzzer. We'll do Top 10 Tuesday, best one-time champs. And I hope all of my research on this is correct. So I've only got 9 guys on the list because I wrote down Connor McDavid because, I thought for sure I thought Edmonton was going to win last night. So that's on me. So I've got 9. So obviously the big O, Oscar Robertson, has to be on this list. And, averaged a triple-double in a season, did all those amazing things. One of the best players from that era. If Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and those guys hadn't been so dominant, I think we talk about Oscar Robertson more than what we actually do. So the Big O has to be on this list. Dr. J, Julius Erving, also has to be on this list. I mean, this is one of the most iconic players in the history of basketball. All right, Julius Erving, man, like that's, I know like people remember the dunks. That is not my favorite Dr. J clip. It is undoubtedly where he drives baseline and he holds the ball out, full extension out of bounds, and does this sweeping, scooping layup. It's absolutely sick. So he has to make the list. My guy, my childhood hero, Dirk Nowitzki, also on this list. Okay, just an incredible playoff run. Shout out to Rick Carlisle. Okay, it doesn't happen without him. Dirk just goes crazy for a month and wins the 2011 NBA Finals. I still don't know how they won, especially when you look at all these different guys, but Dirk has to be on the list. Jerry West also belongs on this list. God rest his soul, he passed away about a week ago now. So Jerry West has to be on the list. A guy who made it to the finals repeatedly and just couldn't seem to get over the top. So Jerry West has to be on this list, which is one of the best basketball players ever in general. And in addition to that, he finally broke through towards the end of his career. Like, that's got to be one of the best feelings. Next, Drew Brees has to be on the list. Won the one Super Bowl against the Indianapolis Colts. The onside kick coming out of halftime was pretty sensational, pretty gutsy call from Sean Payton. That's one of the first Super Bowls that I vividly remember. And I'll never forget them doing that and looking around the room and just seeing jaws on the floor, and the Saints fans, those jaws on the floor turned very slowly into smiles. And for the Colts fans, the jaw just kind of stayed on the floor. So Drew Brees has to be on this list. Aaron Rodgers. Okay. He's won the one Super Bowl. He's incredible. He is one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. I remember pushing back really hard. I still kind of do. When people talk about Mahomes being the most talented quarterback we've ever seen, I don't know about that. Go back, look at 2011 Aaron Rodgers. He was pretty incredible. Okay, that's the year he threw, I think, 50 touchdown passes, and I believe that was the year he won his first MVP, and he's awesome. He's one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. Only one Super Bowl, though, so we're going to leave him on there. Next, I'm going to make an audible. I am. I had Steve Young. I'm pretty sure he only won one Super Bowl. I'm not entirely sure. So I'm going to swap him out for Greg Maddux. Just an incredible pitcher. I don't know if teams would let him pitch today just because he doesn't throw 97. Okay. But got to put him on there. Greg Maddux is one of the best pitchers we've ever seen. Commanded both sides of the plate, could run the two-seam in on your hands, could run it away from lefties. I mean, just an incredible talent on the mound. Next, I've got Randy Johnson, only won the one World Series in 2001 when he was pitching for the Diamondbacks. Chauvin was the MVP of that World Series. He won 3 separate games in the World Series, which is nuts. That's an absurd thing. He was just absolutely dialed in during that World Series. So he has to be on there. Mike Schmidt also has to be on this list, playing for the Phillies, won the one World Series with them. I think that was middle of his career when he was still absolutely incredible. And then the last spot on the list that we're going to fill in here, Walter Payton, sweetness, he has to be on here as well. The second best running back ever behind Barry Sanders. I don't think that's hyperbole. I'm sure some people will get upset at me for saying that, he's not better than Barry Sanders, but hey, I have a right to my opinion and I have a microphone. So, so that's going to wrap up hour number 1 of the Real Jonathan Smith Show. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, we're going to talk Colts. Dan Orlovsky had a tweet about Anthony Richardson because people just can't stop talking about Anthony Richardson for whatever reason. We're going to get to that when we come back here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket, hour number 2 of the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Make sure you're tuned in somehow, some way, whether that's in the car, listening on 1430 AM, watching on YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, or watching on Twitter at Ticket1430 if you want to watch there. Now, how many times do people have to say that something or someone is being slept on until it is established that they are no longer being slept on? Okay. Yesterday, Dan Orlovsky of ESPN, he went to Twitter and he tweeted, quote, "Under the radar player who could throw the whole league off if he takes the leap, Anthony Richardson," end quote. That was the tweet sent out by Dan Orlovsky. And that's now 3 different major big-time on-air personalities, national media people that have said that people are sleeping on Anthony Richardson: Dan Orlovsky, Mina Kimes, Kay Adams. Those are the 3. I am to a point now where it's like I don't think people are sleeping on Anthony Richardson, you know? If like one person mentions him, okay, sure. Fine, he's being slept on. But 2 people, it's like, I don't know. I would say people are more groggy on him than they are sleeping on him. But once 3 people, nah, bro, you guys are wide awake. Okay, and look, I get it. Okay. Like every year there is a second-year quarterback that seems to make some sort of leap. Okay. And when it comes to making year 2 quarterback predictions like this and saying who's being slept on and who's going to make the leap and all those things, Anthony Richardson he's the obvious choice. He is. Like when you look at the other 3 quarterbacks that were highly touted going into last year's NFL draft, Anthony Richardson makes the most sense of the 4. Okay. Like CJ Stroud had an incredible year last year playing for the Texans. He played like one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. Okay. And for him to make a year 2 leap, CJ Stroud would have to play as well as or better than players like Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford. And that is a lot to ask of any year 2 quarterback. Like, do you think that these national media people really want to look at the camera and say, I think that CJ Stroud is going to be better than Trevor Lawrence? I think CJ Stroud is going to be better than Matthew Stafford? Because that's what a year 2 leap would look like for CJ Stroud, who was great last year as a rookie quarterback. And then you move into Bryce Young, who was bad last year, and people have already kind of written him off. I have not. He's going to be bad again this year. I'm still not going to write him off because the players around him were and are terrible. Okay. Bryce Young was surrounded by one of the worst rosters in the NFL last year. And that is once again going to be the case this year. Bryce Young is not in a position to take a year 2 leap because the roster around him might be the worst in the NFL. Okay, people will write Bryce Young off because of that. But it's hard for quarterbacks to play well when the offensive line in front of you is terrible and your best wide receiver is 34-year-old Adam Thielen. Bryce Young is not in the proper situation to take a year 2 leap. He's not. And these national media people, they know that. They understand that. And they know that it would be ignorant of them to pick Bryce Young to make a year 2 leap because he's surrounded by bad players and a rookie head coach. It's not a great situation. So he's not the guy that's going to make the leap. When it comes to Will Levis, he played a decent amount last year, okay, played 9 games, but he didn't look good. Yes, he has a good roster around him, but he's playing for a rookie head coach. Okay, like Will Levis didn't exactly light it up last season either. Okay, he only completed 58% of his passes. He threw 8 touchdowns in 9 games. That's not very good. He threw 4 interceptions in those games. A 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio isn't exactly great. And I don't think that that's the player that the media people want to bet on, a guy who looked spotty at best last season. And then we get to Anthony Richardson, where a lot of the feeling around him is the same. There's a lot to like that you can physically see. Okay? He's big. He's strong. He's fast. He has a big arm. Like, he checks a lot of the boxes that we like to see from NFL quarterbacks. And you can see all these things immediately. Like, you could have gone down to OTAs and you'd have been like, oh, geez, that looks different. Okay? And here's the other thing. He didn't play much last year. Okay, he played 12 quarters. That's it. If Anthony Richardson plays 24 quarters this year, not even like consecutively, if he just plays 24 quarters, then his numbers will go up. If Anthony Richardson plays 12 games this year, then whoever discusses the idea of Anthony Richardson making a leap will more than likely not be considered correct, because his numbers will go up big time because he only appeared in 12 quarters last year. It's an easy way to be correct, especially when the other three options that you have to pick from in terms of who makes a year two leap don't seem to be in positions to make leaps in year two. Okay? Anthony Richardson has a good head coach that seems to be capable of calling plays. I like Shane Steichen. It seems like there's people out there who don't. I don't know why you wouldn't like Shane Steichen. I think he's done a good job. He did a good job in Philadelphia last year with a backup quarterback, no Jonathan Taylor, and Michael Pittman being really the only reliable weapon on the offensive side of the ball. The Colts found ways to score. It's pretty incredible when you really think about it. And if Gardner Minshew can make a flip pass, then the Colts win the division and they're in the playoffs. And we're talking about this team in an entirely different way right now. But that didn't happen. And, Shane Steichen wasn't the one who made that pass. It was Gardner Minshew, a backup quarterback. So I don't know. I like Shane Steichen. The people who don't, I don't really get it. Anyway, back to this. Once again, Anthony Richardson seems to have a capable head coach who is capable of putting players in positions to succeed, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line isn't terrible. It's not. Okay? The Colts have some weapons. Okay? Michael Pittman Jr. is, not the best thing since sliced bread, but, he's a good wide receiver. Jonathan Taylor is a good, reliable, dependent running back. If Edey Mitchell is the guy that everybody thinks that he's going to be, then he should be awesome. Josh Downs was pretty good in his rookie season last year. So when you look at the situation, it's like Anthony Richardson, he's in a better situation than Bryce Young. Okay, he doesn't have to look like a top 8 quarterback in the NFL like CJ Stroud does to be considered to have made a leap. And when you look at the tape and you actually go back and you watch the games, like Anthony Richardson looked better than Will Levis did. Anthony Richardson is the clear choice when choosing second-year quarterbacks who could possibly take a leap. The only question is, will he? And I think another thing that kind of plays into Anthony Richardson kind of being the player that's being hyped up is the one full game we watched from Anthony Richardson last year. He threw for 2 touchdowns and he ran for another. Okay, let's just ignore the fact that he was 11 of 25 throwing the football. But, outside of that, he was pretty good, right? They went to overtime against a good Los Angeles Rams team. In the red zone, Anthony Richardson was good. It's a large part of what people, I think, look for, because it's easier to help a quarterback improve between the 20s than it is to help a quarterback improve in the red zone, right? Because in the red zone, the field is smaller. There's not as much space. It's tougher to throw the football and all those things, right? So for Richardson, I thought he was good in the red zone in the games that he played in last year. And that's a good sign for the future. And I think that's part of why people are picking him to make a leap. And I mean, let's be honest here. Let's say Anthony Richardson plays 15 games this next season. It is completely feasible that this upcoming season, Anthony Richardson throws 23 touchdowns and rushes for another 12. Okay? If he does that, then he's going to be a legit threat and the Colts will be a playoff team. Okay? Like, I don't think that that's, crazy out there, right? That he combines for 35 total touchdowns between rushing and passing. That doesn't seem nuts at all. And I want to stay on the Colts, and I want to continue to discuss things that they can do to be better. What if the Colts traded for Brandon Aiyuk? I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be fun. And I wanted to pose this question because I'd love it if it happened, and it gives me another opportunity to point out the biggest flaw that Chris Ballard has. What if the Colts traded for Brandon Aiyuk? This would never happen. It would never happen. Okay? That's because Chris Ballard refuses to take risks. He refuses to. that is an issue because aggressiveness wins in sports. Okay, the team that is the most aggressive tends to win. Okay, but what if the Colts made a move for Brandon Aiyuk? Okay, the Colts probably have to give up a first-round pick for him, but that'd be fine with me. Could you imagine going to your couch on Sunday? You're sitting down, you got a big old bowl of chili, it's late October, it's cold. You're like, I get to watch Colts football today. And you watch the offense take the field. And it's Anthony Richardson. You're like, ooh, I like that guy. A lot of flashes, a lot of good upside. And then you see Jonathan Taylor, and you're like, yeah, that guy won Offensive Player of the Year a couple years ago. That dude can play. And then you look at the receivers, and it's Brandon Aiyuk and Michael Pittman and Edey Mitchell and Josh Downs. That sounds like a great receiving core to me. That sounds like a receiving core that could elevate a young quarterback, which is something that we've seen time and time again over these past couple years. General managers going out, finding top-tier receiving talent to help boost up young quarterbacks. That's what the Dolphins did with Tua and Tyreek Hill. That's what the Bills did with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. That's what the Texans are doing with Stephon Diggs and not Josh Allen, but with Stephon Diggs and CJ Stroud. That's what the Eagles did by going and getting A.J. Brown and pairing him with Jalen Hurts. Like, a guy like Brandon Aiyuk would elevate the offense, and it would help Anthony Richardson be better. It would give Shane Steichen, a good offensive-minded head coach, it would give him another weapon to get involved in the offense. It would. And I think most importantly, I think it would help the development of Edey Mitchell. I think it would take a lot of pressure off of him to contribute immediately, right? Bringing in a player like Brandon Aiyuk would do wonders for this Colts team. It would. It would also be a great use of cap space because that's something that the Colts still have. They've got $25 million sitting there waiting to be used that they have not used yet. And this is the most frustrating part about covering the Colts. Hey, there are people out there who think that having cap space is a good thing. Having cap space at the end of the season with opportunities to go out and pick up free agents and sign guys to bigger deals, yes, no doubt. But having cap space right now is not good. It's not good. Okay, the salary cap in the NFL is $255 million. It's a lot of money. Okay, if I assigned you the task of building a house and I gave you 255 million pieces of wood, and I took 255 million pieces of wood, and you used every piece of wood that you had, and I only used like 230 of the pieces, you would likely have a nicer house than me because you used the extra 25 million pieces of wood that I gave you that I did not use. Okay? You are wasting resources if you are, if you're running an NFL, NBA, or Major League Baseball team and you are not using every penny that you can. Okay? Like the Colts are only using $230 million this year. Like that tells me that you're not trying to win. Okay? Because that $25 million could be put towards a winning player. It could be put towards a couple of like good players, right? Pay a couple guys $12.5 million a year to come in and contribute. But instead, that money is going to sit there idly. Okay. The Colts have a small window to win a Super Bowl with Anthony Richardson on this rookie contract. Okay. That is the time to win a Super Bowl. Okay. It's when, quarterbacks are at their cheapest and you're not paying them $55 million a year like Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence are getting right now. Also, when we look at the history of quarterbacks in the NFL that have won Super Bowls after their rookie contracts, those guys are all-time greats. Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers. Okay, those are the first few players that come to mind. But when we think about the better quarterbacks throughout the history of the NFL, all of those guys are on that list. Okay, other quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls are guys like Russell Wilson, who won it when he was still on his rookie contract. The Eagles in 2018, they won it when Carson Wentz was still on his rookie contract. And I know he wasn't the starting quarterback when they won the Super Bowl, but because they weren't paying Carson Wentz a boatload of money, they were able to spend it on Darius Slay and like other good players to help bolster up the rest of the roster. It is easier to win when you are not paying quarterbacks a ton of money yet. Okay, that is the time to be aggressive and to go get great support players. And the Colts are in that window right now with Anthony Richardson. And if he's the player that everyone thinks that he is, then Chris Ballard should have the gas pedal on the floor, doing everything that he can to add players to this Colts roster to help them win a Super Bowl. And when you're sitting there and you have an extra $25 million that you aren't using, then that communicates to everybody that you don't want to win. Okay, it is clear that Chris Ballard isn't aggressive enough. Okay, and I think a great step in improving that aggression would be to trade for Brandon Aiyuk, who would immediately change the trajectory of this team going forward. He's a young, dynamic wide receiver who doesn't want to be in San Francisco anymore. Call him up, offer them a first-round pick. Okay, that is really, in the grand scheme of things, not that much. Okay, give them your first-round pick for next year. You're bringing in Brandon Aiyuk. You go to the playoffs. You're giving them, like the 23rd pick next year. Who cares? How often do you find stars at the 23rd overall pick? Not very often. Okay, go get Brandon Aiyuk. It would be a good investment with this extra cap space that the Colts have. Speaking of cap space, I want to address the Pacers this upcoming offseason because people are asking for the Pacers to do things that they can't really do. We're going to talk about that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? Dead battery on America's birthday? America's #1 battery destination is here to help. AutoZone has free battery testing and charging at every store, and batteries starting at just $79.99. With our 4th of July sale, we have savings to help you red, white, and do any other jobs you've been putting off. It's everything you need to get back on the road at AutoZone.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Psst. Hey, I have a secret. I use Secret Whole Body Deodorant because more than just my armpits stink.
Oh, can I use it where my bra rubs under my...
Oh, yeah.
And what about down there? My...
Totally. 4 out of 5 gynecologists would recommend it. So I tried it, and now I get 72 hours of freshness from my pits to my...
Ooh, I love that it's a spray.
Me too. And it comes in sticks and creams too. Go get your Secret
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Make sure you head over to YouTube, search for Indy's Sports Tickets, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hop in the live, hop in the chat. It's great. We're having our daily the Pacers should trade Miles Turner conversation. Shout out Otter Creek. Hey, the Pacers should trade Miles Turner, says everybody. And I'm just like, no, I think he's important. It's like, okay. We have the same conversation every day. It's fine. I don't mind it. Miles Turner's going to have a big game at some point, and I'm, going to be happy about it, and then he'll have a bad game, and then everyone will get on me for it. It's just that is the cycle. That is the way that it goes, and that's cool. That's, nothing wrong with that. Before I get to OG Anunoby and the Pacers and cap space and those things, I wanted to address something that JJ Redick said yesterday. I am on the record saying that I think that JJ Redick is going to be a good NBA head coach. Some people agree with that. Some people are going to disagree with that. That's fine. You are entitled to your opinion. But he checks a lot of boxes. He's competitive. He pays attention to detail. He's been in a lot of NBA locker rooms, even if it wasn't as a coach. I think he's going to be fine. Okay? I don't think he's going to be Steve Kerr, but I don't think he's going to be Derek Fisher either. So he will be okay. JJ Redick is going to be a good NBA head coach. And he was asked a great question yesterday by, I believe, a Los Angeles reporter. I can't remember this lady's name. I feel bad. I like to give credit on that kind of stuff. But she asked him about what misconceptions and things said about you are you looking forward to disproving? And his response is so perfect.
It's a valid question, and I've certainly heard everything. It's been a really interesting 6 weeks or so, just in terms of being part of the engagement farming industry. It's been really interesting. However, I don't really have a great answer for your question because I really don't give a honestly. I want to coach the Lakers. I want to coach the team. I don't want to dispel anything. I don't. I want to become a great coach in the NBA, and I want to win championships, and I want my players to maximize their careers. That's all I care about.
That was JJ Redick when asked about dispelling ideas and rumors about him when it's come to this player search. He was also asked about, what was it like when the Lakers kind of took a break from talking to you to go talk to Danny Hurley? And his response, like that, was perfect. He was like, look, I've won 2 third and fourth grade championships, and Danny Hurley has won 2 national championships at the college level. And that is a great response. And I love what JJ Redick said. I do. It was real. It was honest. There are some people out there who aren't going to like it because he used foul language. How could you use foul language in a press conference? You were the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Yeah, he doesn't care. And I think that is one of the important aspects of coaching at a high-profile place like Los Angeles or like New York. You have to be able to sit in that seat at the press conference and get asked questions like that. Because like he said, it was a viable question. And he was just like, I do not care. I'm here to coach basketball. I'm here to win games. And I'm here to ensure that the players on this roster get better. Love that. Great response. We're off to a great start. But then again, to be fair, look, JJ Redick talked for a living for a few years. I wasn't worried about how he would perform at press conferences. Also, find it very interesting that he said that he was, when he was discussing being talked about, he was like, he's like, being a part of the engagement farming industry these past couple of weeks has been interesting. I just find it funny that he called it engagement farming. And I kind of like it because he's not wrong. That's how some of these people, that's how some of these companies go about it. They just want as many clicks as possible. And hey, I guess that's part of how it works. We do real journalism over here, though, at Indy Sports Ticket. So let's move into the Pacers' offseason plans. OG Anunoby has declined his player option and is officially on the market. Let's debunk this. OG Anunoby will not be playing for the Pacers next year. OG Anunoby will probably end up in a New York Knicks jersey again. Okay, he will. And the reason why I say that is because, first off, he's going to ask for too much money when it comes to the Pacers. They will not be able to afford him. Okay, he declined a $20 million option. He's going to want $30 to $40 million a year, and he just isn't worth that much money. Like, the Pacers would have to get rid of multiple good players in order to acquire him. And I just don't think OG Anunoby's worth multiple good players. Okay, like, I think we've kind of seen this play out a couple times when you're paying your three best players a boatload of money, like, for example, the Phoenix Suns are doing. Like, you aren't going to have enough money left over to put the proper support pieces around those guys. And let's be honest, a big three of Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker is way better than a big three of Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby. It just is. So from a money perspective, the Pacers just don't have the funds to bring in a guy like OG Anunoby. And I've seen people pound the table for Paul George as well. I got to be honest. I don't want Paul George. He's 35. Okay, that means he is declining. The Pacers need a big wing defender. That is what they need. Paul George, at the age of 35, is no longer a great defender. It's not who he is. He's still a viable offensive option. But guess what? The Pacers had the second best offense in the NBA last year. They don't need another offensive option. They need defenders, right? And that's why, when people say the Pacers should go get OG Anunoby, I'm like, okay, you've watched the Pacers play. You know what they need. The issue is they can't afford him. Okay, he's going to be too expensive. Here's the other thing. The Knicks gave up legitimate assets to keep OG Anunoby. They did. That means that they are extra motivated more than anyone else to make sure that he does not walk. They're going to give out the money for him. Okay, because it would be terrible to give away draft compensation and RJ Barrett and a couple other pieces for a player that played like 20 games for you and then left. Okay, that would be embarrassing. The Knicks don't want to be embarrassed again. And here's the thing. The Knicks have the money because they aren't paying Jalen Brunson $50 million a year. They're only paying him $25. Okay, very similar to the rookie quarterback contract thing from earlier. When you aren't playing your best / most important player a boatload of money every year, it makes it easier to afford guys like OG Anunoby. Okay, when we look at the Boston Celtics, part of why they were able to put together this awesome team was because Jason Tatum he hadn't signed the big, huge monster extension yet, so they could afford Drew Holiday and Derek White and these other guys. Okay, and when we look at the Knicks, they have the money. Okay, the only other team that might be able to compete and snatch OG Anunoby away would be the Philadelphia 76ers because they only have three guys under contract, Ricky Council, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid. So they also have plenty of money to throw at OG Anunoby, but in addition to that, Tyrese Maxey hasn't signed the big major money deal yet. He hasn't. So going to be interesting to see kind of what they do going forward, especially the Knicks, because they really only have one piece of competition, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers, who are looking pretty actively to spend that money. But when it comes to the Pacers, once again, Pacers don't have the money to pay for OG. They don't. The new NBA salary cap has made it to where like you get two max guys and then you kind of fill in the rest. Okay, because once you go over that first apron, it just becomes impossible to do anything. And if you go over the second apron, it's like, geez, you're really locked into whatever you have going on. Okay, and the Pacers, they want to be able to remain flexible. Okay, and let's be honest, the Siakam max extension these next 4 years it's a lot of money. Tyrese Maxey, his money kicks in this upcoming season. Like the Pacers just don't have the money. And with these new salary cap rules, even though what I'm about to say next might sound backwards, the best thing for the Pacers going forward would be for them to not sign OG Anunoby. Okay? It'll give them more flexibility in the future. It won't freeze any of their draft picks. Yeah, that's right. If you spend too much money now in the NBA, the league will be like, guess what? No first-round pick for you. Okay? So it's not a hard cap, but there are serious, legitimate penalties if you exceed a certain amount of money spent on your roster every season, which is good. Like I don't mind it at all. So with that being said, freezing draft picks and things, that hasn't happened yet. That starts next year. Zach Edey and Kel'el Ware. Okay, they don't have to worry about, wanting to go play for a certain team and that draft pick getting frozen. Okay, draft starts tomorrow. Gonna have some more draft coverage for you tomorrow. Can't wait. I love covering the draft. I love making all these predictions. No one remembering what I said. It's great. It's awesome. When it comes to Zach Edey and Kel'el Ware, though, right? Like those are obviously two big fellas coming out of the state of Indiana that are going to play in the pros. I can't wait. I think they're both going to have interesting careers. I think Kel'el Ware is more of a sure thing than Zach Edey, but the ceiling with Zach Edey does seem to be higher than Kel'el Ware's. Okay, so obviously there are questions with Zach Edey's defense. I want to start with the offensive side of the ball, though, because I've heard people mention this, and it's not going to happen. Teams are not going to give Zach Edey the basketball on the block. It's not going to happen. Teams do not play through the post anymore. Okay. Nikola Jokic led the NBA last year with 8 post touches a game. All right. And that's the best player in the world. Teams are not going to pause their offense for Zach Edey to dribble the ball 3 times on the low block and then throw up a hook shot. They're not going to do it. Okay. The question when it comes to Zach Edey in his offensive game is how does he look in the pick and roll? And I think he's more than capable of playing in the pick and roll. He and Braden Smith were great at it this previous season. He has good hands. He's not a bad passer. That's really the main thing that I want to look at when it comes to Zach Edey and his offensive ability at the NBA level. Can he pass the ball coming out of the short roll? That's kind of the big thing for him. If he can do that, then Edey will play in the league for 8 years because defensively, I think he'll be fine, right? There's concern of, well, what if he has to defend on the perimeter? Most 7-footers in the NBA can't defend on the perimeter. Rudy Gobert, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Guess what he is incapable of doing? Defending on the perimeter. Okay? So it is not that big of a deal if Zach Edey can't defend Darius Garland, Tyrese Maxey, or Tyrese Halliburton. Not a big deal because most 7-footers in the league can't do it. The question is, can Zach Edey continue to protect the rim at a high level like he did at Purdue? And can he play good drop coverage? I think the answers to both of those is going to be yes. Okay, like especially the drop coverage stuff. Like that's what he's done for his entire life. Being 7'4" and being long makes that a little bit easier. Okay, the rim protection stuff. Like if guys drive into him, he's going to be fine. Telling you he's going to be fine. I'm ready for the Olympics. I'm ready to see what he looks like for Team Canada because we're going to find out pretty quickly whether or not he can play drop coverage because they're probably going to play Team USA at some point, and you know that they're going to put him in screen and roll. You know they're going to play Germany at some point, and they're probably going to put him in screen and roll. If they play Spain, Spain will undoubtedly put him in screen and roll. Okay, it's going to be interesting. Can't wait to watch that. But Zach Edey, I think, is going to be fine at the NBA level, especially if the Thunder take him at 12 or if the Miami Heat take him, I believe, at 18. I think that's where their pick is. Those are kind of the two places I would like to see Zach Edey end up. For Kel'el Ware. Kel'el Ware is a prototypical NBA big guy. He just is. Okay? 7 feet tall. He's got long arms. He's athletic. Okay? He checks those boxes. He's going to play in the NBA for like 8 years. Okay? That's the kind of guy that Kel'el Ware is. Okay? Like he's exactly what NBA teams are looking for. He can set screens. He can roll to the rim. He can finish defensively. He's athletic. He can protect the rim. If he gets switched onto a quicker guy, you feel like he has somewhat of a chance just because he's athletic, but he'll be fine. He checks all of the athletic boxes. The question is if he's going to give the effort that needs to be given. Okay? When he's engaged, I think he's a really good basketball player. When he's engaged, he blocks shots, he finishes at the rim, he sets good screens. He does all the things that you want for a big fella to do. The question is he going to give that effort? I would like to think that in the pros he will, right? Especially if it's only for short spurts. And that's the kind of guy that I expect for him to be. Okay, I don't expect him to be a starter. I think Kel'el Ware's a guy who will come in off the bench. He's going to rim run and protect the rim for 20 minutes a night. And if you get that out of like the 20th pick in the draft, then you say, hey, that's great. We'll gladly take that from the 20th pick in the draft, especially in one of the worst drafts that we've seen in a long time. Okay, the worst one we've seen since Anthony Bennett and those fellas. So Kel'el Ware should hear his name called tomorrow night, and so should Zach Edey. Can't wait to see where those two guys end up. We'll be talking fit and all those things. Hopefully on Thursday. Thursday we'll get a little bit into what the Pacers are going to do with their picks as well. Coming up here in 4 minutes, the Stanley Cup finished up last night, and the NHL does something that every single sport should do. I've got that for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Wrapping up The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Getting ready to transition into, of course, the Dan Dockett Show today from noon to 3. Had a great show yesterday. Going to have a great show once again today. Can't wait to get into all of that. Now, congratulations to the Florida Panthers for avoiding the 3-0 sweep. Pretty great. I don't know. I went into the game last night pulling for the Panthers because, who cares for Canada? And man, I found myself really pulling for Edmonton because I like seeing history. I like seeing these big time collapses and all those other things. And so, it was interesting. I had a good time watching it though. It's kind of fun being dumb sports fans sometimes, knowing that I don't have to discuss what I'm currently watching happen on my TV. The best thing, though, about the NHL, they do this one thing better than any other sport, is they give out this Conn Smythe Award, which, for those who don't know what the Conn Smythe is, it is, instead of a Stanley Cup Finals MVP, instead of an NBA Finals MVP, they give a playoffs MVP. And it's great. It goes to the best player for the entire playoffs. It's not a one series thing. It's a legitimate full length, every single game matters when it comes to winning it. And Connor McDavid of Edmonton won it last night, even though his team lost, and he should have. From my understanding, from my understanding, he's the best player in hockey, to be fair. Don't watch enough to really know, but that's fine. I don't have to. Because when I watch, Connor McDavid play hockey, it very obviously looks different. It just does. And I like this. I like that they give out a playoffs MVP as opposed to, an NBA Finals MVP or a Super Bowl MVP. Okay, the best player on the winning, that way, the actual best player would be noticed every single year. Like, it still feels weird knowing that Andre Iguodala won the 2015 Finals MVP over Steph Curry. Doesn't feel like that should have happened. Okay, and if it was a full playoffs thing, then Steph Curry undoubtedly would have won it that year. In 2018, maybe the reward goes to LeBron instead of, a Golden State Warrior, even though LeBron lost, kind of something similar to Connor McDavid last night. I just think that it makes things a little bit more interesting, and you're truly dialed into everything that happens, right? And I think it also better symbolizes who the dominant player was that year in the playoffs. Okay, like when we look at the NFL, Julian Edelman has a Super Bowl MVP for the Patriots, which is great for him. I like Julian Edelman, okay? But shouldn't Tom Brady probably have it? Isn't he the clear-cut most valuable player on that team for all of their playoff runs? If it's a playoff long thing, instead of just the Super Bowl or just the NBA Finals or just the World Series, then it would be different. It just would. And I think it would more accurately represent the best player or the most valuable player on every team that wins. It just would. And, doing, the one game thing, is fine. It's an okay way to do it. But I just think that awards that are given out should be a snapshot of the season, right? Like the player who wins NFL MVP should be the best player in the NFL that year. Like, I should be able to look back 20 years later and be like, oh, yeah, Patrick Mahomes was the best player in the NFL that year, right? Or, my kid should be like, hey, Dad, was Patrick Mahomes really that good? And I could be like, yes, he was. And here's all these reasons why. Like, here are all the years that he was the best player in the league. When it comes to basketball, it should be the exact same thing. The all NBA teams, I should be able to look back at and be like, yeah, he was the best center in the league that year. Or yeah, he was the best shooting guard in the league that year. Okay, that's what these awards should do. And I think that the postseason, the exact same thing should happen. The awards that we give out during the postseason should be snapshots of what actually happened, of what actually transpired. And Finals MVP, World Series MVP, and Super Bowl MVP don't always give an accurate snapshot. They just don't. Okay, if sports were to do a playoffs MVP, like how the NHL does, then we would get a much more proper view of what the actual playoffs look like and who the actual dominant players were. So love that the NHL does that. Something else that I love is that Canada still sucks at hockey. Okay. They still haven't won a Stanley Cup in, over a decade. It's great. They don't deserve one because we're just better down here in America. We just are. Okay. It's just a fact of life. If you speak French, you're probably soft. That's just the way that it is. And with that being said, I want to move into Top 10 Tuesday, which was selected earlier. I made 2 lists. The people in the YouTube chat, that's right. It pays to watch on YouTube because you can comment which Top 10 Tuesday list you want to hear, right? I'm going to push the other one probably to next week. So today's Top 10 Tuesday is the best one-time champions. Okay, the best players that only won one title. It was a really fun list. I love putting together stuff like this. I had Connor McDavid on here, but then the Oilers decided to lose last night, so had to take him off. Replaced him with Walter Payton. One of the 2 best running backs ever. It's Walter Payton or Barry Sanders. Whoever you want to pick, I go Barry Sanders just because he did these incredible things behind an absolutely terrible offensive line. Okay, he was an absolute stud, all things considered, but he never won a Super Bowl. So can't put him on this list. Instead, it goes to Walter Payton, the Sweetness, one of the best nicknames ever. Okay, staying in the world of football, I've got a couple quarterbacks on here. We're going to go Drew Brees, won the Super Bowl against the Colts all those years ago. And I still can't believe that Sean Payton called the onside kick to start the second half. One of the gutsiest and, in hindsight now, one of the best calls in the history of the Super Bowl. Because it was insane. I'll never forget that moment. So Drew Brees makes the list. Aaron Rodgers also makes the list. The most talented quarterback we've ever seen. I know people are going to say Mahomes. Those people don't remember watching Aaron Rodgers in the early 2010s because he was absolutely insane during that era. Absolutely insane. Next on the list, let's move into basketball, the basketball players that I have on the list, because you know that I have to have some basketball players on the list. The Big O, Oscar Robertson, only wins the one title alongside Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Oscar Robertson, obviously, most notably remembered for averaging a triple-double in a season. He'd been the only one to do it for a long time until Russell Westbrook showed up, and he did it. And so the Big O, one of the best basketball players, ever, won one title alongside Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem then leaves to go play for the Lakers, and we never hear from the Big O again. Not really, but that's kind of what it feels like. Next on the list, Dr. J, only won the one title. Feels like he should have more, just given his impact on basketball and just the way that, I wouldn't say he revolutionized it, but he was the first guy that was flying through the air and dunking and doing all sorts of insane stuff during games, and it was great. So Dr. J has to make the list. Dirk Nowitzki, my guy, coming out from the Mavs, one of my childhood heroes. He has to be on the list as one of the best players ever to only win one title in his sport. That 2011 NBA title run, incredible. Shout out to Coach Carlisle for helping make that happen. Next, Jerry West, God rest his soul, passed away a little over a week ago. Maybe that was 2 weeks ago. I don't really remember. But yeah, God bless his soul. He was a great basketball player, one of the best ever. Finally broke through really late in his career. Just hard to deny the impact that he had on basketball. And I did a list like this a few months ago on just best players that would be better in today's era. Jerry West probably should have been on that list. I don't think I had him on it, just with his shooting ability, and he was quick and he moved well and he's a good player. So Jerry West belongs on this list. Moving into the 3 baseball players that I have on the list now. Greg Maddux. Got to be honest, don't know if teams would let him pitch today, just because he doesn't throw as hard as everybody else now. Everyone's, 95, 96, 97. They're beating people with velo and these hard-breaking, nasty, disgusting sliders. And, that just wasn't what Greg Maddux did. He beat people with control, had multiple pitches, fielded his position. better than anyone? Could you say Greg Maddux is the best defensive pitcher ever with the number of gold gloves that he won? Probably. Was able to win a World Series when he was pitching for the Braves. And, that's one of, the best pitchers ever. Okay. Randy Johnson also makes the list. One of the most dominant World Series performances ever. Won 3 games as a starting pitcher is pretty insane. I mean, Randy Johnson, an absolute beast, 6'10", left-handed, throwing heat, throwing wipeout sliders, the better version of Chris Sale for the younger people out there that are listening. Randy Johnson, just absolutely disgusting, striking batters out from the left side of the bump. So Randy Johnson has to be on the list. And then finally, to close it, Mike Schmidt. Okay, Mike Schmidt is, he's got to be on the list as well. Great third baseman. 1-1 when he was playing for the Phillies, one of the best hitters in the history of baseball. The dude's awesome. I love it. Otter Creek chiming in with Greg Maddux, saying that Greg Maddux was a very good hitter as well. I want to address this really quickly. As an avid baseball fan, I'm so glad that pitchers don't hit anymore. It was just such a waste. Okay, I remember people would argue for it, and they'd be like, "Oh, strategy's gone." What do you mean? I don't think you got to be a brainiac to pinch hit for your starting pitcher who's hitting 108 on the season. I don't know. I just remember when all that happened, people went absolutely nuts. And I just remember being like, this is the best, because pitchers stop hitting now when they turn 15. Like, they specialize kids so quickly now that, I just, there's no point. Like, why are we having them not hit from the time that they're 15 to the time that they're, 24, and all of a sudden we're like, here, you have to hit again. It's like, what? Why? I haven't hit in 9 years. I've just stood on the mound and thrown the crap out of this ball. And so it's so much better now. Like, there's no longer, 3 free outs in, like, when you're going through a National League lineup. It's great. So I'm glad pitchers don't need to hit. They need to stand on the bump. They need to throw really hard. And that's pretty much it. So that's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I hope you enjoyed today's show. The Dan Dockett Show is coming up next. Tomorrow, I am slated to have Tony East on. We may talk a little bit of NBA draft, but the Fever, they continue their season, I believe, on Thursday. They're going on the road to take on the Seattle Storm. That game's on at 10 o'clock. That's brutal. So we'll cover all that tomorrow. No idea what Dan is talking about today, but it's Dan Dockett, so I'm sure it'll be good. I'm sure it'll be entertaining, because that's all that Dan does. Dan just entertains the people day in and day out. It's awesome. Dan Dockett Show coming up next. Thanks again for tuning in. If you missed any part of the show, feel free to go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, where you can find a full uploading of today's show, or you can head over to YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket. If you want to watch me, then I guess you can head over to YouTube and you can watch the full stream there. So that is an option for you as well. Once again, thanks for tuning in. The Dan Dockett Show is coming up here in about 5 minutes. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow from 10 to noon.